Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Champions Chess Tour, which is being held here in Toronto, Canada. Now, yesterday, the Champions Chess Tour started with the first day of action, featuring 8 players from around the world. Those 8 players would be the former world champion, Magnus Carlsen, Fabiano Caruana, myself, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, Alireza Firouzja, Denis Lazovic, Wesley So, and one more player, Norbek Abdusattorov. Now, yesterday was coincidentally also my birthday, but unfortunately, I got off to a very poor start. I was a little bit uneasy, nervous, didn't play my best chess. I lost a tough match to Wesley So, and then an Armageddon in the second match against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. I made a huge blunder and lost that match as well. So, with 0 points out of 2 and being off to such a poor start, today was a chance to wipe the slate clean and try to start off fresh against Alireza Firouzja, the talented junior from France. So, the matches are 2 games, 1 game with white, 1 game with black. If it's tied, you go to the classic Armageddon. So, in this first game against Alireza, I decided to play the move d4. Alireza decides to play d5. Now, yesterday, both Maxime Vachier-Lagrave as well as Wesley So played knight f6 against me, and I decided to play the classic Trump house key with d4 and bishop g5. But Alireza instead plays d5, so I could still maybe go bishop g5, but instead I play knight c3. After knight to c3, Alireza plays knight to f6, and now I play the move bishop to f4, and this is what is classically known as the Jobava London. Now, it's been a while since I last played it. Ironically enough, I played against Magnus Carlsen a while back in a Champions Chess Tour, but I haven't really played it since, and it felt like a good chance to play it once again. So here we get bishop to f5 from Alireza. I play e3, we get e6, and now I play this move bishop to d3. Now, all this pretty standard theory. Alireza trades the bishop, and now I take with the c-pawn, which on first glance might look a little bit weird. However, there are some advantages. I can play for e4, building the big white center. I can play rook c1 to take the open c-file, and in general, this position is actually considered to be a little bit better for white. So, Alireza plays knight c6. Now I go queen b3, trying to hit the pawn on b7. We get the move rook to b8, and now I go knight f3, intending to finish my development with castles. After knight f3, Alireza plays bishop d6, and now I play the move bishop to g5 here. I could trade, but after c takes d6, we have this massive pawn clump in the center of the board here, and neither side really has any weaknesses or imbalances at all. So I go bishop g5. Alireza plays h6, and now I play bishop to h4, keeping the pin alive on the diagonal. Alireza castles, and now I decide to play rook c1, activating the rook on this open c-file. We get bishop to e7, and now I decide to play this move a3. It's a quiet move here, which I played for a couple of reasons. First of all, it stops knight b4 hitting the pawn on d3. Also, down the road, I might want to move my queen away and then play something like b4 and expand on the queen side as well. So, after a3, Alireza plays the move knight to h5, and now I decide to trade the bishops on e7, and I play this move knight e2. Now, knight e2 is not necessary. I could also just castle here, but I play knight e2 so that the rook now is spying the pawn on c7, and black can never really push the pawn to c5. So Alireza plays knight f6, and now I decide to play the move knight to e5. He goes c6, and now I castle. Now, at first glance, you probably will think, well, it's a very equal position, not a whole lot happening. However, in the long term, white should be a little bit better here because I can always play for b4, b5 down the road with a classic minority attack on the queen side. And black really doesn't have any breaks. He can never push the c-pawn because then white will take the pawn. He can't really go b6 preparing c5 because then the c6 pawn will hang here. So black doesn't really have a way to activate on the queen side. So these pawns are somewhat paralyzed. They can't advance. And down the road, I can play f4 or maybe knight g3 and e4. And there are a lot of ideas here in the center of the board. So, Alireza plays knight d7, and now I play this move queen d1. Alireza goes f6, and this is the start of what I felt was a wrong plan from Alireza. Now, f6 looks interesting, because after knight to f3, you figure black can play e5. But remember, if black tries to build a big black center here, I can also play e4 here, and now suddenly we both have big centers, and it's not really clear which center is better. Additionally, if black doesn't play e5, there are ideas like knight to f4, pressuring the pawn on e6. So Alireza decides to play knight g6 here, and now I play this move h4, pushing Harry the h-pawn, intending to play h5 and kick the knight out of town. Alireza plays e5, I go h5, we get knight to e7, and now I play this move knight g3. Now at this point, I was feeling really good about my position because there's some serious light square weaknesses here for black to deal with, and on top of that, I'm up nearly 2.5 minutes on the clock. So Alireza plays queen c7, and now I play a very, very bad move, d takes e5, after a long think. Initially, I wanted to play the move e4 here, but after f5, suddenly I think black is doing okay here. Computer actually doesn't like it, thinks after rook e1, white is better, but I was very concerned with this move, so after a long think, I decided to trade the pawns, go e4 here, and the idea was quite simple. I intended to play knight h4 and knight f5 or knight g6 with a massive grip on the light squares. There's only one problem. When I spent all this time calculating this line, I missed the very obvious move rook to f4, which takes away the h4 square from the knight, and now, even though white might be a little bit better according to the computer, it gets very hard to play. So I play rook e1. Alireza goes rook f8, and now I play rook c2, which is simply a bad move. The last chance here to sort of keep an advantage was to trade the pawns and now go rook c2 with the idea of going rook e2. But I was very concerned here that black would sack the rook with rook takes f3, and after knight to f4 followed by queen d8 and queen h4, I was very worried about my king safety on the king side of the board. So I play rook c2. Alireza goes queen d6. I play rook to d2, and now I play smooth c5. Now, apparently here, black could sack the rook, and after takes and queen f6, maybe black is actually better in the long term, but it's very hard to play, especially with limited time on the clock here, because you're not 100% sure what's going on. So, Alireza plays c5 instead. Now I go knight to h2. He goes knight c6. I play knight g4 with the idea of going knight to e3 and knight f5 or knight d5 as well. So, Alireza plays knight d4. I go knight e3, we get the trade, and now he plays this move knight f6, and here I go knight to f5, trying to create a bastion on the f5 square. Alireza plays queen e6, I go b4, he goes b6, so the knight is still protected on d4. We swap, and now I play this move rook b2. Here, Alireza trades knights, and now he goes queen to e7. Now, at this point in time, I'm up 50 seconds on the clock here. I should be able to prove an advantage, or at least put a lot of pressure on Alireza. Now, yesterday I had a lot of similar situations where time was very close, but when I got really low on time, I started making serious blunders. So, would today be any different? So I play queen e2, Alireza goes rook e8, and now I play this move queen a6 here with the idea of rook b7, creating the classic kebab on the 7th ring. Alireza goes c4, and now I play this horrible, horrible move queen to c6 after a 15-second thing. What I should have done here is played rook b7, queen c5, hitting the pawn on f2, and simply traded the queens. Now, what I was worried about was this move rook c8, where black can push the pawn down the road. But if I go rook c1, stopping the c pawn here, I should never lose the game. However, I was thinking that I desperately needed to try and win the game, so I played queen c6 instead. And this is a move that I think in a game without increment is probably a very good, very tricky move to play. But when your opponent is gaining time, and in this case 3 seconds with every move, it's just a bad decision. Because Alireza can snatch the pawn on a3, and after rook b7, it looks like I'm threatening the double stack or with the queen and the rook on the 7th rank. But black can play queen a5, cutting off queen c7 here, and now the rook on e1 is hanging. Here I play rook f1, which is a horrible move after a long think again. What I probably should have played was rook to b1, but the reason I didn't play this move is that after c3, I only saw the move rook to b8 here, and after black plays rook d8, I simply am not breaking through because black will have something like queen a8 and rook d4, guarding the rook on d8 with the queen, as well as the rook on d4. So, in this position, however, there's a very serious threat, which is rook takes g7 check, sacking the rook, and after rook to b7 check here. When the king moves, queen f6 is played. There's simply too many mate threats on the 7th rank. But I didn't see the idea here, so instead I play rook f1, which is an absolutely horrible move. The rook becomes very passive here, and now the rook does nothing. Alireza plays queen d5. Now I go queen c7, trying to checkmate, and I simply miss this great move, rook g4, which guards the pawn on g7, queen on d5, covers the f7 square, and now there actually are some mate threats towards my king on g1. Here I play this move rook to b1 with, I think, 3 seconds left on the clock. Very, very tough move that I play after a 10-second thing, and it's a clear sign once again that I'm not finding the best moves when I get low on time, and I'm just panicking. So here, Alireza plays knight takes h5, which is a mistake here. A very logical move, of course, because he's hoping that I'll take, and then there's a checkmate on g2. But now I can play rook to d1, hitting the queen. You got to go queen a8 to keep the mate threat alive, or else you will lose the horse. Actually, queen f7, I just trade, and you lose the horse on h5. So, after queen to a8, now I play rook to b7, and here Alireza plays this move knight to f6, which is a big mistake. What Alireza had to do here was trade the knights on g3. Now, again, after f6, it looks like they're massive threats on the 7th rank, and the whole house is collapsing. But after knight to f5, f7, and king h7, let's just say I take, and black takes. Apparently, black retains an advantage because there's queen g6, ideas like knight h4, and they're massive threats towards my king on g1. So instead he plays knight to f6. Now I go rook to d6 here, and Alireza blunders with this move, queen c8. Now the last chance to try and save the game was this move, rook to f8. But after rook to f8, I can sack the rook with rook takes knight. Black takes with the pawn. It's checkmate on h7. And if black plays the move rook takes f6, now I have rook b8, simply winning the queen on a8 and the game as well. So Alireza here, with limited time on the clock, plays this move queen to c8, which loses because now I can check. And after king h8, I sack the rook with rook takes knight. Again, if black takes the rook, there's checkmate in one with queen h7. And here, Alireza has to sack the queen. And now I take the queen. I could have taken the rook as well, and after king h7, rook f8, there's a checkmate. But with such limited time here, I knew that this endgame was winning with the queen and the knight for the two rooks, and so I knew that I should win this 100% of the time. So Alireza takes the rook. I go queen to f7, attacking the rook and the pawn. He plays rook c8. I take king h7. Now I go queen e6, hitting the rook on c8. He plays rook gg8. And now after the move knight to e4, Alireza Firouzja resigns the game here because I'm threatening knight f6 to fork the king and the rook. One sample line would be c3, check, king to h8. And now I can go queen d7, threatening queen h7 checkmate with the knight and the queen. If you stop with rook g7, then you lose both rooks, and it's still checkmate as well. And I guess if you play, there aren't really any other moves, even like rook d8, same thing. Check and knight f6 followed by queen h7 would once again be game over. So after knight e4, Alireza resigns this game. I get my first win in the rapid portion of the tournament. The second game of the match would also go very well for me. I would win a very complicated game with the black pieces and collect my first match victory. Now, in the second match of the day, I was playing against the five-time world champion or former world champion. I always get the order confused. Magnus Carlsen. Now, both of our rapid games were very uneventful and ended in a draw. The first game that I'll point out very briefly was actually kind of interesting. So with the black piece, we had d4, d5, c4, and I played c5, creating the classic box structure here with the four pawns facing each other. Now, this was the first game of our match. It would end in a quick draw, and I would also draw the second game with the white pieces. And so thus we went to Armageddon. Now in the Armageddon, Magnus bid 15 minutes. I bid 9 minutes and 40 seconds. So Magnus got the white pieces. However, I have draw odds. So if the game is a draw, I will win the match. So Magnus starts with e4 this time. I play e5. We get knight to f3. I play knight to f6. Knight takes e5. And now I play this move, knight takes e4. Now, on first glance, you probably think, wait, this is the classic blunder, which we've spoken about many times, because after queen to e2 hitting the knight, if you move the knight to f6, after knight c6, we have the classic fossil here, and white wins the game. But I have been looking at a lot of different things, chess course and so forth, and one of the lines that I came across was this classic Damiano gambit with this knight takes e4. So here, yesterday, I actually had to face queen e2 multiple times against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and after queen e2, queen e7, queen e4, and d6, both games that I played were very messy. The Armageddon game had f4, f4, takes, f5, and after queen to e3, knight c6, knight c3, knight b4, king d1, and I believe I played bishop to e6 here. The game was very messy. I probably should have won the Armageddon game. I ended up losing, but I got a great position out of the opening with this Damiano gambit. So Magnus today does not play queen e2. Instead, he plays d3, attacking the knight. I go knight to f6, d4, and now I play this move d5. Now d6 is, of course, completely playable as well, but d5 is what I chose. We get bishop d3, bishop d6, castles, castles, bishop f4, and now I play this move rook to e8. Magnus goes rook e1, trying to overprotect the knight on e5, and use the two bishops, and maybe even go queen f3 and queen g3 down the road. Here I play the move c5, Magnus plays knight c3, and now I play this move c4. Now this is a very committal move, and I was very unhappy with myself when I had to play this move. I used over 2.5 minutes to play it. Would have been better if I just blitzed out c4 right away, but I used 2.5 minutes, and I think if I had those 2.5 minutes back, maybe it would have been a little bit different. So we get bishop e2. I play knight c6, trying once again to pressure this knight in the center of the board, and now Magnus goes bishop f3. Now after bishop to f3, I play bishop e6 to guard the pawn on d5. Magnus plays queen d2, and now I play his move bishop e7. Now this is a move that I played quickly because I'm already a little bit low on time with 6 minutes, and I kind of want to force something. I don't really have any other obvious moves other than bishop f8, so I go bishop e7 simply to combat this bishop g5 idea so that there's no pin on the diagonal. Here we get b3 being played by Magnus, and now I play this move c takes b3. Another move that I played relatively quickly. I really wish I could have had more time to think here. In fact, Peter says that after rook c8, maybe black is even better, but it's an impossible move to play simply because there are ideas like d5 with forks, and you have to calculate a lot of different lines. And with only 5 minutes and 49 seconds, it's just too much. Either I spend 2 minutes here, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'm going to lose on the clock most likely. So I take, Magnus takes, I go bishop b4, trying to pin the knight here on c3. Magnus plays knight d3, attacking the bishop, and now I decide to trade the bishop for the knight. Now, this move was a move that I played after a bit of a thing. I didn't really want to do this, but I saw that after the trade, I could go bishop g4, because if I don't have bishop g4, white gets the 2b's, and in a long endgame, Magnus will be able to milk the clock, he'll keep the game going forever, and most likely I will lose. But when I saw that I have bishop g4, which forces a trade of one of the b's, and white won't be able to keep the two bishops, I thought that I was doing okay. So Magnus trades, he goes rook e1, I play queen c8, and now he plays this move h3 after a very long think. Now, at this point, Magnus up 3 minutes. He plays this move, and now it's down to a 20-second time advantage for Magnus here. I play knight f6, and after knight to b4, I play this move knight e4, which is the best move. And after knight takes c6, I now play this move b takes c6 right away. Now, this is where if I had taken the queen on c3 and not seen the boogeyman, there's a very, very good chance I would have drawn the game. But I simply assumed in this position that after knight e7, king f8 takes bishop d6, and king g8, there was something like rook e7, and I thought it was very scary. But here I can play something like knight b5 to attack the pawn on d4, and after bishop c5 and b6, c4 for example here, I can trade, I can take, and I think after takes rook a7, I have rook c1, king h2, g6, b6, and after rook b1, b7, king g7, white will have to play something like rook a4, and this will lead to a drawn endgame with both sides having rook and 3 pawns on the board. So, this was the moment where I needed to probably use like a minute, try to work it out. Instead, I trusted Magnus, and instead I took this knight on c6. And after this, the position gets very hard to play now, because even though material remains balanced here, white has a great bishop here. He controls the e-file. I have some weaknesses here in the center of the board, and white can always kick the knight out of e4 with f3 as well. Now, in this position, I played this move h5, and this was a move that was simply a mistake. What I should have played here was either queen to f5, attacking the bishop, or pawn to h6. When I played this move h5 and Magnus went f3, I realized actually when he played this, right before he played this move, that my idea of queen f5 here just loses the game, because after rook takes knight, the pawn guards the rook, and if I take the rook, I lose my queen on f5 here, and I lose the game. If I had spotted this tactic, I would have just gone h6, but I only saw it as soon as Magnus played f3, and now unfortunately it's too late, because after knight f6 and rook e5, I have this very serious weakness on h5 here, and it's going to be very difficult to guard the pawn. White also can control the e-file here, and I think from a practical standpoint, it's already close to loss, considering the time situation. So I play queen d7, Magnus goes queen e1, I play rook e8, he goes queen to h4, and now I play this move rook e6. Now here what I probably should have played was rook takes e5, and after d takes e5, let's just say knight h7 takes knight f8. I'm down a pawn here, but I get a blockade. Maybe I can start pushing some pawns here, and practically speaking, there are still some chances. Instead, I play rook e6, Magnus goes queen g5, and now I simply blunder the game away with this move g6. Now, this is not a move that I want to play, but I simply made a mistake in my calculation here when I played this move, and Magnus trades the rooks and goes bishop e5. And what I missed here, quite simply, was I thought that after knight e8 and queen h6, I could go f6 attacking the bishop, and I was fine. But if I go f6 here, white just takes the pawn, I lose the game, and that's all she wrote. So at this point, once I play g6, the game is hopeless. What I probably should have played here was something like a5, and after takes bishop e5, knight e8. Again, I'm down a pawn here in the center of the board, but maybe there's some practical chances with knight d6. Again, I still think I would have lost at this point, but it doesn't lose immediately. Unfortunately, after g6 takes and bishop e5, now I'm just lost. I go knight e8 here. If I were to play knight d7, another move attacking the bishop after check, knight f8 and bishop to d6 here, I can check, but after king h2, the dark squares are covered by the bishop here. And if I play queen h6, there are many ways for white to win. Probably simplest to play something like queen e8 here. My queen is tied down forever. And eventually, white can take this pawn. And after take, queen c8, queen g7, I believe white can go c4, c5, c6, c7, and win the game. So I play knight e8 instead, queen h6. Now I go f5 here. It's a horrible move to have to play, but at least now mate isn't happening on the next turn. But after queen h8, king f7, check, king f8, queen a7. Now white has a wooden shield. I can't kick the bishop out of e5, and it's just all over. So I play knight f6. We get queen c7. King to e8, Magnus goes king h2. Here I play h4. It doesn't really matter what I do, but might as well just keep moving. We get bishop d6, queen b7, check, I block. But now this endgame is losing because the pawn here on h4 is on the same color as the bishop, and white is already up one pawn. When you combine that with the time situation, it's all hopeless. So I play knight h7, bishop d2. I go king d7, bishop e1, g5. Magnus plays f4 here. And now I'm simply going to lose the pawn on h4. I take, he takes on h4. And even though it's only one pawn, white has the outside pawn. Also, the pawns on f5 and f4 are very, very weak, and I'll lose one of them as well. So I play king e6, king g1, king f7, king f2, knight f8, king f3. And after knight e6, c3, king g6, bishop e1 here, I play knight g5, which loses, but it doesn't really matter what I do because white has a very simple plan of going bishop d2 to collect the pawn on f4. If I play king g5, after g3, the pawn is pinned here, and here white simply has 2 extra pawns, and this will be a very easy conversion. So I play knight g5, Magnus plays king takes f4, and here I resign the game because it's totally hopeless. Now, this is, of course, very, very disappointing way to finish the day after I won my first match of the day against Alireza Firouzja. And also, I did have some chances, probably 2 or 3 moments here where maybe I could have found a better move. Alas, it was not meant to be. I lose the Armageddon game. I lose the match against Magnus, unfortunately, which means that I have 1 match point out of 4. Now, the good news is that there are 4 players who have 1 match point out of 4. Myself, Denis Lazovic, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and I believe Alireza Firouzja, Fabiano Caruana, and Norbek Abdusarov have 2 match points. And tomorrow I'll be playing both Fabiano and Norbek. So if I win one or both of those matches, there's a very, very good chance that I will find my way into finishing in the top 6 and continuing on in the event. But at any rate, it has not been a great start so far with only 1 match point out of 4, but the show goes on, and luckily for me, I still have 3 more matches and a chance to qualify for the next stage of the Champions Chess Tour final, which is being held here in Toronto, Canada. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button below, and I will be back tomorrow with a recap after my 2 matches against Fabiano and Norbek. See you guys soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye!